Hello, and welcome to this episode of Community Voices here on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. You're welcome to yet another episode of a beautiful conversation, and this time we are discussing matters that transcend the borders of Uganda, where ordinarily we take our duties, even though we get to speak about matters that go even beyond the African continent. My name is Phillip Muliisa, and here today we are speaking Uganda, Kenya, and we are discussing the Uganda-Kenya trade deal, and we want to make an assessment of what it means, one, for the two countries, but also largely fitting into the wider East African community and broadly the African continent, because then we understand that whatever we do here in Uganda or in Kenya or in Tanzania is later on reflected in the region, the continent, and largely as citizens of the world. It is party to what is happening elsewhere in the world now. Joining me to make a beautiful conversation and indeed assess that a particular agreement is a panel of distinguished citizens of the region who are, first of all, first-hand beneficiaries or participants in the different activities happening in the region, but also people who have observed the relationships between the two countries and largely the region. And they are here to share with us their knowledge, their thoughts, their opinion, and indeed what they think can be done better to make sure that actually these agreements that we keep getting into as nations, as the peoples of this region and continent, get to serve us the way we want them to serve us. I will invite them to say hello to you, my viewers, before we go into the depth of this conversation. And I will start with, in Uganda here and largely the East African community, there is a common adage that ladies first. And since we have just one on this call, I will afford her the opportunity of saying hello to us first, so that we kickstart the conversation. Zira, greetings, welcome to the conversation. And it is a common practice here at Civic Space TV for people to talk to us about where they are and what they think we should know about their specific location during the conversation. So Zira, where you are and how you are. All right, thank you so much, Zira. And as you get settled in, I will be talking to the other people, and certainly we shall come back to you. I have a journalist on the call, and that is Mr. Goodluck Musinguzi. Goodluck, greetings. Welcome to the conversation, and how is where you are?
Good morning, my brother Muliisa Phillip. Thank you for hosting me. I am in Kampala near Lake Victoria. I can feel the morning breeze, and it's a bit sunny day, and definitely putting on a t-shirt, maybe later on walking around. Kampala is good. It's when you are here, it's a busy place. It's away when you're up country, you find maybe some people are working, but it's a bit dullish. When you're in Kampala, everybody's just doing something like ants.
Thank you so much. Good luck, and we're happy to know that the weather is actually very okay, and indeed everyone is going about their business during this day. Thank you for joining us, and we can't wait to hear what you have to share with us. Wilson Nuwandinda, he is the researcher in international relations and an author. Wilson, greetings. Welcome to the conversation, and how is where you are?
Yeah, I'm so happy to join in this interesting conversation. It is always so good to talk about East African integration and East African community to start with. As an enthusiast of the same and an author, like you have said, it adds on some knowledge to make additions and what, but it is interesting to join in this conversation, and I'm looking forward to an insightful one.
Thank you, Wilson, for joining us, and we're also looking forward to what you'll have to share with us.
Yeah,
I can
how
see
you
Zira,
asked,
you are back.
you asked
Yes, you
how,
want to share where you are and what is.
Unfortunately, I'm now in Zimbabwe. It's where I'm joining it from, so my network is also not stable, so you will bear with me, but I hope I will try my best to be in.
All right, thank you for joining us from Zimbabwe, and we're happy to have you. Zira, can you now hear me? Are you able to talk to me?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Philip. My name is Zira Babu. I'm based in Busia, Uganda. I'm a cross-border trader. I trade from Kenya to Uganda and at times to also DRC. Thank you.
Thank you, Zira, for joining us. Cross-border trader, Uganda, Kenya, linking into DRC. How is Busia like today, Zira, if you mind to share with us?
Busia is very okay as usual. It's basically a business area. Majorly, it's about cross-border trade, and very many products are really traded. Some of them leave Uganda, go to Kenya, and others leave Kenya and come to Uganda. So it's a busy place. It's a busy area, though. Since COVID, I mean, it's not so busy as it used to be. Those who know Busia very, very well, it was a very busy area. As of now, it is not so busy as it was previously. But yeah, business still moves.
Thank you, Zira, for sharing with us that particular situation of Busia on the part of Uganda. And looking at my panel today, I think, again, I have one special person who comes from outside the borders of Uganda, and that is Miss Prince Kamau, Bryan. Bryan, greetings, welcome to the conversation. How is where you are, and what can we know about that particular location now?
Thank you so much, Mr. Phillip, for having me into this conversation. I hope I am audible enough. I am currently in Nairobi, Kenya. I am a Kenyan by birth and by situation. And Nairobi, as always, is the heartbeat of Kenya, is busy, is up and about. And yeah, systems are running. People are trying to survive the current economy, the current state of the environment. But Nairobi is peaceful. Nairobi is good. Nairobi is blessed. I thank you for hosting me into this space.
Thank you so much, Prince Kamau, for joining us. And it's good to know that Nairobi is moving on well. The business is going on. The people are so well. And indeed, that's another city for us, the East Africans, to do business in, but also have our life lived throughout the region. Now, colleagues, we are here to discuss at a small level Uganda-Kenya relations, and indeed mainly in the economic area, but also widely. We are pushing that conversation to the East African region, and of course, later on, we shall push it to the continent and the world and look at how our activity in terms of trade fits into the wider region, the continent, and the world. But look, when you go through history, you realize that these two areas have been trading since time immemorial. And the recent history will talk about how, for example, the kingdoms of Uganda, of Bunyoro were trading with the Luo, were trading with the Kamba, and the items of trade at the time we are talking about 1850, 1870, coming to the early 1890s before colonization, and people were trading in things like salt, backcloth, talk of foodstuffs, and the Kenyans were doing a lot of livestock and beads, and the people at the coastal area were doing a lot of craft and kawari shells, exchanging them with the Ugandans and so on, people that are part of this greater region. And moving forward, getting into the colonial era, we look at trade actually growing even bigger, because here we had now people who are putting a semblance of organization to our trade and structuring societies like Uganda to grow items like cotton and coffee, and this becoming our major trading goods getting into Kenya, since this actually was the major export route to wherever these items had to get to. And indeed, the significance of the railway line that was starting in Mombasa, coming to Kisumu, and indeed heading into Uganda. So you realize the history is actually rich in terms of cooperation in the area of trade, but also how the peoples of this particular area interacted. And here now in 2025, we are still discussing the relationships in terms of the social life, but also importantly the trade, because this again feeds into the economics that improves the standards of living of our people. And I want to listen to you, first of all, and I'll start with you, Prince. The relationships between Uganda and Kenya from the Kenyan perspective, and often we look a lot on the paper, government, policy, diplomatic issues. But from people to people, how would you speak about the relationship between Ugandans and Kenya based in Nairobi?
Thank you very much, Mr. Phillip. That is a very interesting question. And I like the way you've brought us in looking back at our history. I agree with you that our people, our communities, the different communities in the different geographical areas, because I believe the only thing that separates Uganda and Kenya is the borders that were imposed on us by our colonialists. So these communities have been trading since time immemorial, before the interaction of money, before the colonialists even came into our lands. And our communities have always had the correlation and the relationship of trade, even before we all knew what trade was. And I believe this relationship has been the hugest factor, or the glue that holds us as people together. We've had trade between our different communities because we produce different things, we produce different goods, and we all must benefit from the relationship between our two countries, between the communities, between the two regions. And from a Kenyan perspective, I believe that for us, we have always had this understanding and agreement that we cannot do things alone. And we believe that we produce and sell to other people, and we also have to buy from other people. And we have the innate sort of structure, sort of understanding that has been inculcated even in our schools. In our primary schools, we learn about trade from a very young age. We learn the history, and this cultivates as well to the growth of the trade between the two countries and between the two regions. Looking back into how the history of our trade and our relations have evolved, I believe there has been factors that have affected a lot of connection and a lot of interlink between the two communities, between the two regions, between Uganda and Kenya. There has been a lot of policy changes. There has been a lot of governance changes. Kenya being a democratic sort of following the democratic sort of governance role, Uganda following slightly different but quite similar. Having the relationships between our leaders, the governance structures, the policies, there has been a lot. And I am really hoping that I do get the time and the opportunity again to look at the changes, to look at the policies that have affected the trade and the relationship between our two people. But in my opinion, this is a relationship that has been there. This is a relationship that needs to be there and that we need to cultivate, if not expand. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prince Kamau, and you give us a very good summary of what you think the relationship looks like. And that is a Kenyan perspective. I want to pick a Ugandan perspective. And Goodluck, you move around quite a bit, but also you have access to a lot of information in terms of the interactions between the two countries. I want to listen from you. And as a Ugandan, what would you say about the interactions between Ugandans at citizen level with the Kenyans, leave alone the interactions at presidency level, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and things to do with that? The interaction, people to people, how is that relationship? And do you perhaps agree with Kamau here that the only thing that actually separates us is the border that exists created by the colonialists? Yes, Goodluck.
Good morning, everyone. I had an experience in, could it be 2007, when there was that election or immediately after. I don't know whether Prince Kamau can confirm, around the 2007, 2008.
The Kibaki Odinga election.
Yes.
Yeah,
I was on a bus. We were going to Nairobi and going through to Tanzania as journalists from Uganda. And we stopped somewhere, and one of us could have mentioned something small, but regarding something like peace, like how we should interact. People made it down. One person's statement was made a Ugandan statement. Somebody was giving an opinion. And the other time is when I was also going to Mwanza through Namanga. Now here at Busia, somebody, when they were giving us those movement passes because we didn't have passports. I think somebody forgot to write a word through, just through. And when we reached the other side, I can tell you the harassment was just beyond. The third and last one is when I was in Nairobi and I was putting on a t-shirt of Uganda Cranes.
Mm.
And Kamau, I don't know if you know that market near State House, every Sunday. I was asked to remove the t-shirt. I was told I could be kidnapped, I could, Somalia, those things. And for me, so from that perspective, I would say personally, I felt so bad because I had to go back to the hotel, remove a t-shirt just because it had the word Ugandan. And for me, to the Kenyans and to any other people in the region, we need to look at some of those small incidents that they are not good. The positive aspect part of it is that the trade from Mombasa, from wherever, we know that most of our things, our goods go through Kenya. But of course, also, when elections are on, we have to look for an alternative route, because any single statement made by here, again, you have seen our trucks, our vehicles, our people being killed, trucks being burnt down. Though I didn't want to discuss that, but it is that aspect that if you say we are brothers, that it is just the border separating us, I think I disagree. I covered the Land Probe Commission when we were in Chiliandongo. There are Kenyans who are owning square miles of land. So for us on our side, I think as Uganda, we have been a welcoming, but for me, the borders are still there, having gone through some incidences that really scared me as an individual. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Goodluck, for sharing that experience. And indeed, we extend our sympathy to some of the ones that were not so nice. And certainly, we hope there are things that cannot occur again in any of the sister nations. And you see now, it gives us a mixed perspective on what actually is on ground in terms of the interactions with the two countries. And I think this will feed into the wider discussion of how we interact at the economic level. But let me listen from you, Zira. You are a trader and you interact with people at a personal basis in business. You go past the border and, of course, going into the other countries as well. Share with me your personal experience of how you interact with the Kenyan audience, the Kenyan market, the Kenyan supply system, and how would you compare it with how things are run back home in Uganda? And indeed, where do you think there are some gaps that could actually be painted so that they are recognized and indeed fixed? Yes, Zira.
Thank you very much, Phillip. I would like first to commend the previous speakers. For Goodluck's experience, I mean, it's not a good one. But from my personal experience as a trader, I've been a trader for over 7 years. I started trading when I was still in high school, and I'm still trading. And I can really say the relationship between Ugandans and Kenyans keeps improving every day. But you see, even within a family, you cannot avoid conflict. And those are things that we cannot really do away with. You may be having a very good relationship, and at some point you will still conflict. Because when we say Ugandans are beaten from Kenya and all that is happening, in Uganda, I can give a scenario that happened, was it in 2021, 2022, around 2022, where the Kenyan fish was impounded in Uganda, the vehicles were taken, and they didn't receive the justice maybe they needed. And those are things, it is a one-off, but it happens both sides. We've seen Kenyans maybe saying Ugandan eggs shouldn't cross to Kenya, protecting their local markets, because at first when I was dealing in eggs, I would usually take them to Kenya. They were my greatest customers. But at this point, actually, I'm getting eggs from Kenya and selling them to Ugandans. Such things change, maybe depending on the existing policies and the standards. But the time I've been a trader, I've dealt in eggs, I'm currently so much into Irish and fish and getting them from Kenya, bringing them to Uganda. And then I can say my experience is really okay. The relationship keeps improving. But what happens in most cases, why most people get harassed, it's the information gap, where you don't know your rights, you don't know the existing instruments and policies that are supposed to protect you and guide you. And once you don't know what you need to know for you to stay safe, people will take advantage of you. Even the people who are supposed to implement those policies, when they understand you don't know anything, trust me, not even a local Kenyan citizen will harass you, but even at the border, anyone, you're now a candidate for harassment. So I would say we would
But you see,
actually
Zira,
make some.
and if you allow me, and what you say is very important, but look, when we discuss, for example, interpersonal relationships, and I understand there could be laws that protect certain actions and behaviors and practice in our societies, but there is also the practical bit of humans interacting where the law is not on the watch. And not all, we understand that not all cases, even when they happen, can get into the enforcement bit and it get into the courts and so on. I'm looking at how an ordinary Ugandan like Zira gets to treat an ordinary Kamau when they find them on the streets of Kampala. What would inspire Kamau to mistreat Zira when they find them in Nairobi, or the other way around, just because they are a person from just a neighboring country? What would be the origin of that?
Philip, I think these are just perceptions. You see, when Ugandans say we are mistreated by Kenyans, it comes back to Kenyans still. They will say we are still mistreated by Ugandans. You get a single person, not a few person who will say, if I hear Ugandans say I was mistreated by a Kenyan, I'll be dragged into that conflict immediately, because this is a fellow Ugandan that gives an experience of they were harassed in Kenya, and I'll pick up that immediately. And when I draw back a few years back, we actually had very bad relationships with our Kenyan sisters and brothers in terms of trade. Like all the time you could say this is happening, this is happening. But you see currently, it is a bit improved because of these things that we are not taking into account. Previously, we didn't have things like the border management committees, but currently, since they're in place, you know, these people, they also include the traders, local traders, these committees of the borders, include local traders like we, who can give our complaints and the challenge we are facing, so that the other countries can also say this is what these people are facing when they cross this side, and the others will also come and share their experiences. When we go back to our countries, we shall then tell our people, our fellow traders, the circles we are in, you know, this is what has been said and this is what is being done. And also Kenyan people go back and tell their traders, this is what is being done. So when such extends and the mindset of people keeps changing, and traders will change their perspective of, you know, Ugandans are not actually bad people, they are good. Or Kenyans are not actually bad people, or they are good. It improves that relationship. And currently we are doing a bit well compared to the DRC, where we don't have such things. You understand? Because we can say our relationship with DRC isn't so good. And when you're trading with them, we have insecurity because we don't have such structures into place. So the start of peace and maybe improving the perception of people down there starts with this, because once we are given slots of maybe we have a local trader, we have a policeman, we have ABCD participating in those local border management committees that are in place, it goes beyond that level. It goes down, because we too had that perception in around 2019, 2018, and so on. You would hear most women are being harassed even at the border. Even crossing bribe was like too much corruption. You couldn't pass so easily, and you would see most of them could go into smuggling. But currently, actually, the numbers of smugglers have really gone down, very low. You can see the border is really very busy, but it starts here. When we change the perception of people, it will really improve, because I see that is the information gap that I've been talking about. Because when you go, I've been in several meetings. The last month I've been in a couple of meetings with traders in different products. But wherever I've gone, I've heard people say, now there is an instance where traders were telling me, you know what happened, Zira, in Ugandan Kenyan traders go direct to the farms, to the farmers. So we the traders have no business. But then they were advising there should be laws and policies that should say traders should not go direct to the farmers. But I look back, me when I'm trading Irish, I go direct to the farms, because I know it is well anyway. We have different things like that. Like I know what is supposed to guide me. Because if you don't know, even from the start, you get someone harassing you from the border. By the time you reach Kenya, you're already frustrated. and you'll actually leave trade. You'll immediately leave business
All
and sit
right.
wherever you sit. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Zira. And I give you a bit of time to really give us the actual experience because you are doing this on a daily basis. And I think you've done as well in trying to paint for us a picture of the interaction and making that slight comparison with some of the other neighboring nations. Thank you so much for that. And Wilson, look, you hear the interaction and the experience of the colleagues we have here. And I want to take it to a little higher to the leaders and the diplomatic levels. Look, for example, the president of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, has been in Kenya in the last 2 years at least 4 times. And that's not typical of President Museveni. He doesn't travel that much. And when you look around the world, for example, in the last 2 years, he has not been to any other country twice. It is only Kenya that he has visited 4 times. And that tells you of the deliberate effort by the leadership in Uganda and indeed Kenya to try and interact and work together on the different things. And I want to pick your thought of, first of all, what is informing these frequent visits of President Museveni to Kenya? And of course, President Ruto has been here very many times, I think even more than the times President Museveni has been the other side. And what informs this interaction and what is behind the curtains that certainly ordinary citizens like myself might not be looking at? Yes, Wilson.
First things first, yeah, I know Museveni is not a person who likes to travel, as he says. So when we see these frequent visits to Kenya and Kenya President Ruto to Uganda, of course it shows it is a sign of something. But from before we start the judgment, I've heard from these colleagues, fortunately or unfortunately for me, I have not had any issues with the Kenyans, so like interactions, so it's because I'm not into trade like they are. But for me, I think that the bilateral relations as far as trade is concerned, because be it Kenya, I think it is the center of trade in the East African community. We have most of our traders, like some they buy most of the goods in Kenya. And you see, for years, traders and transporters have raised concerns about unnecessary delays, high costs, and corruption along our shared borders. The truck queues at Maraba and Busia, as goods they attracted unnecessary charges, bureaucratic bottlenecks. You see, they slowed down businesses. To try, if you look at this agreement, and not imports, isn't that a plus to the in the East African Community Agreements? There is what was called the East African Free Trade Area, but has it been free? That is the question we should ask ourselves. Yes, it was implemented as the East African Free Trade Area, but it has not been free. Tariffs have been there. So when I was reading through, I didn't get time to internalize it, but then one of the things that caught my eye is that these products now will be treated as transfers and not imports, so they will no longer attract duties. We removing politics aside from this thing might give a plus to President Museveni. If actually these frequent visits are going to continue yielding these things, the border improvements, you see slashing congestion along borders, infrastructure boosting, the governance framework, reducing corruption concerns on the borders that have been there, then for me, I think it is a plus. It is a plus for these frequent visits. There is nothing that actually is hidden because now we have started seeing works being implemented. And for us, that's what we want. As East African integration enthusiasts, that is one of the steps to come. Because now, if we are having goods moving freely from Uganda to Kenya on the border, then the next time it will be Tanzania, the next time it will be Rwanda. And so that is what we want to do. That is what actually we call the East African Free Trade Area that we want. It starts like this. It is a gradual process. It is a gradual process. Though we say there is East African Free Trade Area, but it is not there. It is not there. It is just territorial meaning. But then, I think this is one of the steps to the East African Free Trade Area. If we can have goods
So maybe
moving
if
around
I understand you well, Wilson, and if you permit me, could we then say that for us to achieve some of these benefits of being in the same region and working around these agreements, we should see more of our leaders interacting directly, Ugandan leader to Kenya, Kenyan leader to Tanzania, and around the region so that we can fast track some of these achievements that we get to see now in the interactions between President Ruto and President Museveni?
Yeah, of course. First of all, we wouldn't need to see the presidents actually making frequent visits if we had actually ministries that are independent and empowered to do these things. Because I think this shouldn't be an issue of presidents moving around. But then if the case is the president, him alone standing up and doing things on is implementations of these decisions that have, because they have been there a long time ago. Like I've told you, I based so much on this East African Free Trade Area because this was going to be the genesis of trade between Kampala, Nairobi, and all the East African community countries. But then this is the first step. Like you said, yes, if it needs presidents moving around like this, interacting each other, if President Ruto comes to Uganda and actually sees what is happening on the borders, the congestion, like they say, these corruption charges that are on the borders, what they see them and they go back, then if they can come to a common agreement and mutually agree that like the agreement reclassifies goods moving between Uganda and Kenya, instead of being treated as imports, goods will now be recognized as transfers. So this means that cross-border trade will no longer be subjected to unnecessary customs duties and disciplinary taxes. Isn't that a plus now for our traders?
All right. Thank you so much, Wilson, for that. And you paint a good picture. We are still on Community Voices Uganda here on Civic Space TV, and we are discussing our interactions between Uganda and Kenya. And we know there is a very recent free trade deal that was signed between Uganda and Kenya. We saw the Honorable General Wilson Mbasumbadi in Mbale together with the Honorable Iki Anjui from the Kenyan side, Minister of Investment, coming in and putting pen to a few agreements that will allow free trade, actually what we call now transfer of goods and services across the borders of Uganda and Kenya. And we're trying to make sense of what this means, first for the two nations, but two, feeding into the wider East African community. And Kamau, I want to come back to you. Look, you see, these are two countries that are and peoples that are trying to work with each other, but they are also signatories to agreements at the East African level. And Wilson here has been talking a lot about the free trade area. We have things like the customs union. We are now chasing the monetary union. It has been postponed, I think, about 3 times, but hopefully now we're able to get it at around 2027, 2028. And I don't know, what does this mean for two nations to be getting closer at a bilateral level, but not harnessing now the other agreement of the wider East African community, which we are saying that we want to go up to political federation? Is this not a contradiction? And indeed, won't the other nations look at us as people who are becoming, sidelining ourselves and getting out of the wider arrangement? What does it look like, Kamau?
I agree with you. Yes, for some, in a certain aspect, we do seem like we are sidelining ourselves from the East African community. But allow me to take you back right where we were inceptionalizing the East African community. And one of the objectives of our East African community and why these countries were coming together was to enact what Mr. Wilson was talking about, the East African Free Trade Area. And this is something that has always been a key sort of deliverable for the East African community. But sadly, our implementation work has been poor in both policy work and actualizing these policies into practical steps. I liked when Zira was giving her sort of experience and talking about her experience as a trader. And these are the sort of conversations that we are supposed to be hearing. Not the conversation between a president and a president, rather the conversation between the people of Uganda, the people of Tanzania, the people of Kenya, the people of the East African community. Because true to the fact, believe it or not, the trade has been there. I tell you with credible confidence that I know of leaders in my country who have businesses in Tanzania or have businesses in Uganda. And vice versa. But the truth of the East African community spirit, the truth of the East African free trade area was not just for the leaders themselves, it was for the people. And I believe this is a problem that is ailing our nations in our East African community, is the fact that our sort of leadership structures and our sort of governance is not really benefiting the people themselves, but is benefiting what we call here in Kenya the political class. Currently, I can tell you freely that the political class is enjoying a lot of what we call incentives and a lot of benefits from the trade aspect, but the people themselves are crying. I really sympathize with Mr. Goodwill for the experience he had when he was here in Kenya. And I appreciate the fact that he actually noted it down, that it was during that very painful era of my country and my people in the 2007-2008 post-violence elections, post-election violence, sorry. During this time, it is and I keep on saying this, our problems are with our governance structures, with leadership. Our people have been divided, have been the division that we see even amongst the Ugandans, the Kenyans, the Tanzanians, has been brought about by the politics and by the leadership that we usually have. And it is very sad because rather than our leadership being the glue that actually brings our people together to enhance this trade, to enhance these advancements of the East African community, they are the ones who are actually purporting the division. We have seen the sort of interactions our people have had in Tanzania over, it hasn't been more than 3 months ago. Such stories, such testimonies on a political and a governance issue, on a civil right issue, it raises a lot of questions. Now, if this is how we are treating people when it comes to civil rights, what about when it comes to trade? We have heard of our institutions, for example, the police institutions, the police forces, the police services, being the center or the instigators of these harassments that Zira was talking about. People cross the border from Kenya to Uganda, and the police service take advantage and harass these traders. The traders from Uganda to Kenya come here, they're harassed by them. These are what we call institutionalized sorts of crimes, institutionalized disadvantages based on the people. I am telling you for free, if a leader today decided to do business between Kenya and Uganda, between Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, regardless of the environment and the sort of relationship that is currently there, the sort of political heat that is currently there between our East African community, they will still achieve their goal at the end of the day. But a common man between me and you, if we decided to do trade, we will have a lot of tax restrictions. And I believe that this trade deal that was signed in July is supposed to be a stamp on what the East African community is all about. I believe that the East African community and why we came together, why we decided, you know what, let's join in together, let's help one another, let's improve on our areas, let's improve our countries, let's improve on our infrastructure, was for just that, the benefit of the people. But what we are currently seeing is, it's literally just the benefit of a very few. So in my opinion, I believe, and I agree with Mr. Wilson, that yes, this trade deal is a plus for our people, but we need to actually have the proper implementation. We've been crying this in Kenya for the past couple of years now, that we have the best of policies, we have the best of laws, but we actually need to implement these laws for them to actually work, and not just work for a specific sort of group of people, but for the better of all the people.
Thank you, Prince, for that, and you gave us a very good insight around that area. And Goodluck. Look, I want us to have a conversation around especially the politics, and he hints at it in some way. And look, to what extent does political activity in the different nations affect the progress? First of all, the interactions, for example, between Uganda and Kenya, but also broadly the East African region as we push for the monetary union and successive political federation. And for example, he mentioned recently, you know, the people that were either denied access to Tanzania or arrested within Tanzania. And you can speak of people like Boniface Mwangi from Kenya. I know those are the people he referred to. Martha Karua was also there, and he was denied entry. Former Chief Justice of Kenya, 2010, the name gets off, but he was also not allowed there. I think also, again, another former Chief Justice, Maraga, he was allowed access, but also given very little time to stay. We know the experience of Agatha Taire here in Uganda, and a couple of other political issues keep coming up. And the question becomes, what is the sustainability of, first of all, the things we get today, like this agreement we talk about, but also us being able to achieve the integration we are looking at, whenever there is a political change in one of the nations, then the attitude changes in that nation towards the neighboring countries and indeed the wider region. Yes, good luck.
Thank you very much. I would beg to differ a little bit from my other colleagues in terms of leaders meeting. If you know the history of, for example, Uganda and Kenya, before 1986, the trade balance was to the other, even posho, what they call unga or something, the Kenyans, ugali, something like that, we would import. But as we speak now, the trade is now in the favor of Uganda. We now are at 1.1 billion exports versus 900 million US dollars. Now, where leaders are needed is that, for example, when it comes to benefits and taxes, let me give an example. You remember we were importing oil, the petroleum products and diesel and all that. When Uganda chose a different way, he knows the former minister, Prince Kamau should be knowing the former minister of energy. He went on really to put Uganda in a tight corner, and definitely that needed a meeting of heads of states. Because if it didn't happen, Uganda had done all these things, you know, now the way we buy our own oil, which come on the sea, and then they are pumped in the pipeline of Kenya. But somebody was really trying to make sure that we still find the older way being the same as what we were proposing. Until when heads of states
going through middlemen and so on.
Yes, and it was really, really affecting milk and all those things. But you find that the farmers in Kenya and maybe some other people were saying, no, why are you allowing cheaper Ugandan goods? And yet for us, you know, we have been making all this. And if you remember, the former president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, was importing milk under some company, which I don't get quickly off my head. And that time things were okay. But when Ruto came, now our milk was being stopped. So for me, I think leaders have to continue meeting, because at the end of the day, production, all countries are trying to produce something. Kenya has a bigger advantage that it is the route from the sea to Uganda, to DRC, and all these other surrounding countries. But also they must allow us to sell some things, so that, because each country must look at the balance of trade. And therefore, when agreements are signed, for example, as I was trying to look at agreements, when the president has gone to Kenya, most of the things were not being worked on. And even now, the one which was signed in Bali recently, for it to work, it's going, I don't know whether maybe the politics in Kenya voting is coming close, and maybe the Kenyan government is like, you know, Uganda was there for us, and therefore we should, you get. But immediately when they had won, when President Ruto won, the trade balance, things were seeing our people were all of the things were being stopped from going the other side. So for me, when they come to their senses and they now say, yes, we can trade, that is the best thing we can do, because there is no country which is an island. We cannot say we can manage things alone. But remember, also Kenyans must always remember that even if they are sending anything to the DRC, it also passes through Uganda. If they are sending anything,
maybe let me ask quickly, Goodluck. One of the things Kenya, for example, when they blocked Ugandan powdered milk in 2020, in 22, or you talk about eggs in 2021, or any other product, they were giving two reasons, and one of them was about the standards, so the quality, and the other reason, actually, they were choosing us of overproduction, which meant that we were getting a lot of products in their market, making them very cheap, and their products could not be sold. And perhaps they have a reason to be worried about our production and indeed how much we get into the economy, because in the end, every government is looking at protecting its own citizens.
Yes, for example, look at milk. Milk is taken by children, and I don't know what the statistics are saying, Mr. Kamau, in terms of milk production. Children of Kenya who are in school, the million children, maybe they need it, the eggs. So there are those things which are essential for human beings, that if you make, for example, medicine, and you have been hearing all these talks, if you make medicine expensive, you are cutting off. You remember the HIV story. Medicine had, the world had to come in and say, subsidize this so that people survive. And so for me, there are things like food, which are essential for human beings. Mr. Kamau, you know that when Uhuru was leaving office, food was very high, oil, and ugali and all those things. And in the end, when we have food become affordable, if Uganda is good at producing food, but Kenya is also good at transporting things. It's at the cost. All our vehicles, everything must come from Kenya. So you must balance and say the other one has a comparative advantage in this, the other one has this. Lastly, let me give this example. Tanzania, some Ugandan leaders wanted to stop rice from Tanzania. That because it was flooding here. The president said, don't. He said, now you see them, they're also doing this. He said, don't. He said, time will tell. Just he said, who is consuming the rice? Those who have money and go to the shops will go and buy the rice. If they find it available, let them buy. But when you stop people because of these small things, then it's not right.
All right, thank you so much. Good luck. I see, Kamau, you have a quick comment to make. Please make it before I come to Zira here.
Yes, thank you. Allow me to bring a different perspective to my good friend, Mr. Goodluck. He looked very much at the production aspect, and we have to agree. In the East African community, we have been blessed with land, we have been blessed with resources and natural resources that can enhance our production in all countries. And that should not be our basis of our conversation. I want you to imagine this. Within the last 2 years, our manufacturing aspect in Kenya has shifted. Many manufacturing countries have shifted their grounds from Kenya to our neighboring countries, to Tanzania, to Uganda, others to Ethiopia, to Rwanda, and all of that. And it is being seen. And this is because of tax laws in Kenya and a lot of issues that are brought about by the governance structures. This has been a cry from the civil society space here in Kenya, that if the people could actually realize the fact that it is them who are actually going to suffer if things don't go their way, and not just the people of Kenya, but because I believe the people in Kenya and the people in Uganda are the same people. Believe you me. This is the problem that we currently have. We are focusing too much on how me and you can compete rather than on how me and you should uplift each other and uplift our own region. And that is, I think, the positive aspect I'd like to take from this conversation and this trade deal between Kenya and Uganda. Let it be progressive. Let it be something that we want to look forward into the future. Because I believe at the end of the day, the people in Uganda are the ones who are going to suffer if there are tax laws, if the congestion at the border still remains, if the harassment still remains. The people in Kenya, the people in Uganda are the same people who are going to suffer the most. Our leadership structures, and I repeat this, our leadership structures change. Here in Kenya, we change our leaders every 5 years. We have to change.
Mm.
And you are seeing the way the political environment, especially here in Kenya, with the rise of the Gen Zs and the young people, the sort of leadership that is going to form our next governance may be a very different leadership with what we currently have today. And we have to keep on bringing the citizens and the people into these conversations, because these are the people we are talking about. These are the people who are suffering. These are the people who are being affected by these sorts of deals.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Kamau. And Zira, look, when I was looking at, I followed the interaction between the two ministers in Mbale. And for example, if I quote one statement from the Honorable Kinyanjui, he says, this is from what he was when he was speaking after the meeting, we have adopted that Kenya will treat products from Uganda as though they are from Kenya. So it will just be a transfer from Uganda to Kenya or Kenya to Uganda, which means it will not attract any duties. And the Ugandan minister also made a statement that speaks to the same. And Kenyan goods coming to Uganda without any duties, and Ugandan goods going to Kenya without any duties. And they also spoke about, for example, constructing another road, a dual carriage road that goes through Uganda to Kenya for easy transport on the road. They also talked about fast tracking the construction of the standard gauge railway through Kenyan side coming up to Busia, and Uganda picking it up from there, extending it to South Sudan and Rwanda, and many other things they talked about. The other about clearance, I know you talked about the clearance earlier, and they said they want to employ technological advancements to make sure that clearing of goods happens faster at the border, so that we don't have the long queues of trucks, and of course at the port clearances and so on. And I want to hear from you as a trader. First of all, when you hear such developments, how much happier or unhappy are you as a trader? But two, do you think these are actually the solutions you are looking for as a trader, or there are some specifics you're actually interested in that you do not see the leaders trying to address? Yes, Zira.
Looking at where we've been as traders and where we are, I would say there is a difference. The leaders have done some work, maybe, that is what I can say. But speaking about the recent trade deal, I personally don't see anything new about it. I don't see anything exciting about it, because what did they talk about? They talked about the non-tariff barriers, infrastructure, but all these are already existing in other instruments. We have the Non-Tariff Barrier Act. We have the African Free Continental Trade Area. We have the Common Market. We have the Customs Union. We have a lot of instruments that have not yet been implemented. I would like to agree with Kamau that we have very good policies in place, but proper implementation, or even implementation, still remains a problem, unless I'm being convinced that this trade deal will ensure that already existing policies are going to be implemented, because we already have something like the simplified trade regime that is supposed, it already helps the small traders who trade within 2,000 USD to trade without those other taxes that they talked about, the duties. As long as you have a certificate of origin, you're allowed to trade without incurring most of those taxes. But then it appears that what I said initially, that the information gap, the traders who are supposed to benefit from all that do not have the information of that. So it goes back to always deals, and meetings. So down here, implementation and the localization of those policies is not really visible. So when we say they're already existing and you're coming back up with a trade deal, I mean, what is that is new? Because from the perspective of the ministers, they showed like this is something new that they have brought on table.
So perhaps let me ask, if you allow me. Yeah. For example, the ministers said they are going to eliminate import permits for traders. First of all, do you have an import permit?
So this comes back on which product you're trading in, because there are different products. Even when I talked about the simplified trade regime, theoretically, it says $2,000. But a month ago, I was at the customs, and I was trying to inquire about something about Irish, because at that point, it could go around 6 million. So that is below the $2,000. But practically it is different. You gather and they tell you this particular product doesn't fall under that. So with all that we are having, permits and everything, implementation, and there is also selective implementation anyway. Who is trading? Do you have that information? If you don't have, trust me, all that will not work. Whatever they're speaking about is really nice and good. For a trader, we would be excited, but knowing these are the things that have been in place as packages in different instruments and have not been used, and then they're bringing them as new things to people who already didn't know they already exist in different ways. So I wouldn't say I'm so excited, but maybe I think they'll hope to, that deal will hope maybe to make sure there is implementation of these already existing policies that are in place.
Thank you so much. And implementation, we keep singing implementation. And Wilson, I want to hear from you on this. Look, in the colonial times, we were boasting about things like the East African Customs Union, the East African Currency Board that was initiated way back in 1919, talking about the East African railways and harbors. And these things somehow operated for the colonial master. He was able to implement this across his colonies in East Africa. And coming fast forward, when we get independence, we institute an East African community that we fail to manage. And in 10 years, it collapses. Fast forward 1999, 2000, we are coming back, East African Community Corporation, whatever you want to call it. And we speak about all these things, customs union, common market, removing of all the barriers. But here we are in 2025. We are still speaking about policies on paper that are not implemented. We are speaking about free movement. The other day I was traveling to one of the East African nations, and I thought I would just get in with my national ID, and they told me, oh, you need a passport. We must look at your passport. And what becomes of the implementation of these agreements that we sign willingly, that until now we cannot achieve the benefits of them for the peoples of East Africa? Yes, Wilson.
Yeah. Thank you, Phillip. So that takes me back to the question that you first asked me. Why the president? Why do we need to see presidents all over planes meeting each other in countries to have these issues brought to table, these ideas implemented? Like the background and the history you have given, of course, everywhere it is the implementation that where the line is always drawn. Ideas are there. Ideas are very many. They have been said since time immemorial, but then implementation comes back. So back to that question, why you say do we need to see presidents flying all over again and again, Ruto here, Museveni there? I think since we have seen these presidents come, because we have not seen implementation yet, this is still a deal that has been signed. I think we should also have another discussion later to have these traders whether it is actually being implemented. But for me, I want to put the political thing aside and focus on the deal that was signed. Really, it entails very good and clauses and words and sentences. Things will be implemented because we have seen and accountability. And this is, I don't know whether you have read that, and a standing technical committee to monitor the progress of this. Okay. I think you have seen it. It includes active participation from the
Wilson,
private sector.
If you allow me, for example, we talk about the standing committee to monitor the implementation of the agreement, but we very well know there is a standing committee to monitor the implementation of the Maputo Protocol. There's a standing committee to monitor the implementation of the Kigali Protocol. There is a standing committee to monitor the Yamoussoukro Protocol. There's a standing committee to monitor every other protocol and agreements that will come up across as East Africa and as the African continent. But none of them has been achieved. 10, 20, 30, some of them are getting to 50 years. What is it with these standing committees? What is it with the public service? What is it with the leaders that stops us from actually implementing this? And perhaps is it such that, for example, the agreements stay at presidential and ministerial level, that the person offering services down in Kisumu or down in Sembabule, where you are, the public officer there, is not taken through what the government is looking at achieving with this agreement, and therefore they do not know what to do with whichever agreement that is gotten out of such engagements? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, of course, like you have said, we have had these committees, but still implementation failed. But to me, I think, of course, it is take it to the managerial weaknesses. If we have seen presidents table these issues, implement them, go through ministries. Now we have a weakness through that line, that change where these ideas and issues, or even I think the implementation stops around there. But it goes back to corruption. This issue roots all on corruption. Even when you go on borders, even when to involve URA, there are strict guidelines. Now, sometimes I blame these traders. They also have shortcuts. They will get to the border and maybe they have their containers. So they know the right procedure, but because they can pay something and they get a shortcut, they end up paying. So they also breed corruption and it affects implementations of these ideas. Me, there's a way I'm having trust in this thing. I don't know why. My things feel that this time around it will work because we have traders that are so active. We have seen traders close down businesses and the government rises up. We have seen it. So I don't think you can table all these eye-catching decisions and then you just stop on implementation. I think it will cause chaos. But for me, I have so much belief that since it called on really the two presidents to come, and the either parties in Uganda, in Kenya. So my belief, of course, we have many loopholes on implementation that we have seen, and the causes are all the same, from political to social to economic, all everything. But me, I don't know why I'm trusting that this process will work.
All right. All right. Thank you, Wilson, for that. I seem not to have you here, but you make a good point there, and it's good that you believe in the success of this. Colleagues, our time is very much fast spent. You know, conversations around the East African community are very interesting, that often we don't want them to end here on Civic Space TV, but at a particular time they have to come to an end. I don't know, Zira, you had a quick comment to make. I don't know whether you still have it. I saw you gave me a signal. If you still have it, kindly make it before I come back to Kamau here for a quick.
No, Philip, I was just clapping at your submission because by the look of things, I don't know. the Wilson is telling us he's believing like, you know, it's going to be a success. And then you're reflecting on whatever has been happening at committees. I don't know if they're standing committees or sitting committees in this perspective. Anyway, let's believe this is a standing one.
All right. Thank you so much for that, and I appreciate that. And colleagues, like I said, our time is very much fast spent. We have, I think, about 10 minutes to be out of here, but there's something I want you, I don't know whether all of you or one or two of you to comment about. There are voices that keep saying that East Africa and the East African community, it is easier to interact and achieve the benefits and all these agreements we talk about in the traditional East African community of Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, as opposed to trying to achieve it with all the other countries that came in a little later. And I want to pick your thoughts on this. Do you think we can quickly fast track these agreements and achievements and prospects we look at as a region in the traditional East Africa, as opposed to the wider East Africa that has about 8 countries counting? And if so, then how do we treat the other members of the region? Kamau, I start with you, but try to be as brief as 2 minutes.
Thank you. Allow me, I'll answer the question and also give my closing statements. The East African community is a big place and it is big enough for all of us. But I agree, we have to first sort our things. In my opinion, I believe that we have a lot to do as Kenya first before we actually come to the East African community. I also believe there is the very same sort of conversation in our different and respective nations. Even in Tanzania, I am in touch with a lot of members of the civil space in Tanzania, and they agree that we have to first work on our own countries, on our own people. There has to be a huge change of mindset, a huge change of attitudes and beliefs. We have to accommodate each other, we have to live with each other, and we have to learn how to really love one another and actually accommodate each other in this very little, and well, it's not little in this space of ours that we have. The East African community is a huge entry point to Africa as a state, as a continent, and we can agree that it is a huge entry point to even the other sorts of continents that we sort of trade with. It's a huge doorway for us to trade with the Middle East and the Far East Asia. It is a doorway for us to trade with Europe and the Americas and even Australia. And I believe that being the doorway, if we had the sort of goodwill in our own countries, I believe it will reflect in the sort of the three East African community, the original East African community, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, which will reflect to the wider East African community and even Africa as large. I have, and I'll still say this once again, in the wake of this new change of leadership in our East African community, in my own country in Kenya, in this wake of the young people rising up and occupying, as my fellow Gen Zs here in Kenya like saying it, we have a huge sort of opportunity and a huge chance to actually come up with something that will last for lifetime, something that is true. If we decide to heal from our ancestry with the sins of corruption, the sins of misappropriation of public funds, the sins of the division of the people, I believe we have the potential to be the next or the very great lead in our next economical boom. And we are moving on well. I want to agree with the colleagues and the conversations we've had today. We are moving on very well. We have policies that are superb, that are beautiful, that are perfect. We just need to move on in the same spirit when it comes to implementation, when it comes to the change of attitude of our own selves, our own people, and how we actually view each other. Thank you very much, Mr. Phillip and the colleagues. I rest my case.
Thank you so much, Prince Kamau, there for sharing that with us. Goodluck. Let me hear from you. Going forward, how do we achieve and streamline some of these activities so that actually the East African community and all these agreements serve us as a people of East Africa? Yes, quite briefly.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it comes all of us to individuals because when you wait for the wider government to do something for you, they'll never come to feed you in your mouth. It has to be me and you who are going to actualize some of the things. Even the small experiences I've had, they are part of the growth. And therefore, I would wish to see more Kenyans come to do business here. And Mr. Kamau, to tell you one of the things is that most of our hotels in Uganda are manned by Kenyans. Most people like the way you guys do your work, and that's another plus. And so even Kenyans coming to maybe for our tourism to come to our national parks, like the way we go to Masai Mara, Mombasa, and some, because you know, in terms even of tourism, I think Ugandans, we have more, Kenya has more tourists coming from Uganda than any other country, if the data is right. But the last time I saw it was around that. So the thing is that I believe that we need to talk the language of economics, not the language, not any other language, because when people trade with each other, then even these other small issues will always be small issues. And like he says, the Kenyan youth coming in, you know, to rise up to the occasion. I also hope in Uganda, that youth will stop from lamenting, stop going for small things that really, but one, emphasize on education, but also do trade. And for you to do trade, you must, for example, our colleague from Zimbabwe or somewhere, we need to have all of us, like me, I don't know when I was last in Kenya, I need to get my passport, get on a bus, get on a plane, whether Kenya Airways or Uganda Airways, maybe that SGR, if it comes here, like that one which stops in Nairobi, I would wish really to sit on it, and the next time I'll be in Nairobi. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck. And Wilson, your final remarks on this subject.
Okay. The final remarks from me, Philip, I think, like I said, I cannot go without calling on the youth now to get involved in the stages of integration. You see, though integration, though we talk and talk and talk, but we leave it to these people and we don't engage in the process of integration, then we are doing nothing. But for me, I see the Kenya deal is a game changer. It signals a new chapter in East African cooperation and proves that when nations come together to remove barriers, specifically going into trading, but then it also paves the way for political integration, for social integration, because when traders are doing their economic integration, there are also social context that is there, like these people that had bad experiences with Kenya. All this thing can remove those barriers, and we can have a united East Africa, beginning with these stages. So it paves the way for even the political integration. So I think let us embrace it, let us take part in the processes, and we can get to a win, and we say unified East Africa. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure joining in. I wish you a good day.
Thank you, Wilson. And it's interesting whenever we talk about these cross-border interactions, because even without the wider economics of trading between Kampala and Nairobi and Dodoma and Gisenyi, Kigali, wherever, you realize we have border communities where people have farms on the opposite side of the border, where you have Ugandans fetching water in Kenya or Kenyans fetching water in Uganda, and they go back home, where you have people getting their animals and they are grazing in the other country, and in the evening their flock comes back to this country. So these are very even more practical than what we talk about at the policy level and so on. And I think there is no much regulation in that area. People are just interacting naturally. And I think one of the examples that crowns this is, if some of you might remember, the Ugandans might remember a great politician in the name of Agri Awori. He was at one time a minister for presidency here. And he had a brother in Kenya, Muda Awori, who was actually vice president. These were brothers, blood brothers, and one was a minister in Uganda and the other was a vice president in Kenya. So I don't know whether there is any classic example that is bigger than that in terms of how much we are one as the peoples of Uganda and Kenya. Zira, any final remarks on this topic?
Thank you very much, Philip. I would first comment about what you talked about, the trade deals being maybe majorly among the traditional East Africa, or even involvement of the others. At what stage would the others be involved? Because I would like to appreciate that integration is a process. You can't bring the other ones at the same speed with the traditional ones. We can take an example of DRC. DRC seems to have integrated, but then you still need a visa when entering DRC. You still need a passport when entering DRC. So, and then that is not a problem, because it had its maybe other standards and policies and so on before joining the ESC. So that can't be blocked immediately, like, I'm joining, so I'm doing away with this immediately. So it's a process that we should appreciate, and they should also appreciate it. They can always join in later or at different stages where they feel they're comfortable, as we allow them to grow and also internalize the whole East African community thing. And then thank you for this opportunity. And then the one thing I would like to speak about is the youth involvement, because as we keep saying, the youth are not maybe appreciating this, because where are they anyway? How much spaces are they given to participate in all these processes. If you tell us we should now accept the deal, but we're not there in the cooking of the deal, maybe we're not involved, perhaps we're not aware, they should maybe let us know. So, maybe such a percentage of the young people has been involved from the cooking, and not just us coming during the menu time, and we are on the menu actually, but we didn't contribute to the preparation of the meals, and maybe on meal specifically is supposed to be prepared. So some of these things are not even birthday parties where you're going to surprise the young people. There are things that the young people are supposed to take part from the initial stages. And also maybe the accountability. I would also speak about accountability and monitoring and evaluation of these policies as they come in. So because they already have the existing ones, maybe they have been at some point implemented, but then there is no way we can track that. So I pray maybe for this deal that the time it has come in, it is able to capture and to capture those small gains that have been made, and everyone is really able to see them anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Zara. And colleagues, when I wake up in Kampala, like today morning, I can just get my national ID and jump on a bus and travel to Konjiri or Gulu or Mbale. But what happens? A person in Europe, for example, with the same ID from their country can just wake up and travel from Poland, go through Slovakia, travel to France, cross to Germany, cross to 28 countries without having to seek permission to get into those countries, without having to seek for a visa, without having to seek for anything. They just wake up and move to that destination. A person in Texas in the United States of America will wake up and cross and go to Delaware and go up to Massachusetts and cross to 50 states, each of which is bigger than Uganda or Kenya or Tanzania. Some of them are just one state is bigger than the whole of East Africa. And I look forward to a day when I can just wake up and grab my ID and then I can just jump on a train or a bus or a plane and get to Nairobi, get to Kinshasa, get to Juba without having to go through all these challenges we go through as we have to travel across the East African community to meet our brothers and sisters, either for social events or for business. And once again, let me say thank you so much, colleagues, for joining us. I had Wilson Nuwandinda, who is an author and a researcher in international relations. Wilson, thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate the thoughts you have shared on this conversation today. Zira, Babu, a businesswoman between Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, you deal in agricultural products. Thank you so much for your time and for the thoughts you've shared with us here. They have been very helpful to the conversation. Goodluck, Musinguzi, thank you so much for your thoughts and for the time you've had for the conversation. And indeed, Prince Bryan, Kamau, Country Coordinator, Youth Alive Kenya, thank you so much for your time and for the thoughts you've shared with us here on our Community Voices and the wider Civic Space TV. We appreciate your time and indeed the thoughts you've shared with us. Special thanks to you, our audience, for keeping it Civic Space TV and indeed looking out for some of these conversations that we keep having about matters that shape not just Uganda, not just Kenya, but East Africa, Africa, and the world. Special thanks to the technical team and all other partners at the Center for Constitutional Governance, who always make sure we are able to sit and have these conversations here. And I want to ask, as I go out of this conversation, that how did the Europeans achieve what they have, and how did the Americans achieve it? Was it actually only through following the processes and being peaceful, or at a particular point they actually involved a bit of force to force some of the people who were not willing to unite with them, and later on they are benefiting from the gifts of unity? We have to think about this as a region and indeed as a continent. I am Phillip, Muliisa, and let me say good evening, and may you all have your freedom always.